Hello everybody, I am Keaton and this is Kid Catholic Season 11, Episode 5. I hope that you are having an absolutely wonderful Tuesday so far. And what I wanted to just start off before we get into today's topic, in the past several of my videos, YouTube has continued to disable comments. Part of the issue might be because they think I'm a kids channel, they don't allow comments on those. I have been allowing comments, and so if it says that the comments are turned off, that's not me that did that, and I'll turn them back on as soon as possible. But if you want to leave a comment and you can't because the comments are turned off, go to my community tab and the post where I posted about this video, you can always comment on that, so I'll still be able to see what you have to say about the video, which would be an absolutely terrific thing. So just so you're aware of that, like it's not me that is doing that. But what I wanted to talk about today is something that I feel like is extraordinarily important. Okay, so Jesus in the New Testament was asked what the two greatest commandments were, and he replies with two, and he replies with loving each other just as much as yourself, and loving God above all else. And obviously, the first one that I mentioned is incredibly important, but what I want to take this video to focus on is loving God above all else, because I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but I used to hear that, and on the surface, I would think, oh, okay, I mean, that's easy. He's God. Of course I'm going to love him above all else. But there's a difference between just saying, yeah, I love God above all else, and actually truly believing it and feeling that love. And so I want to talk about 3 easy steps to achieve that goal of loving God above all else, because I feel like a lot of times we tend to overcomplicate it. Achieving that goal is a lot simpler than we oftentimes make it out to be. And so the first step that I want to talk about out of 3, the first step is a willingness to take that first step in achieving that goal of loving God above all else. And I know that sounds kind of simple, but it's true, because a lot of times we expect to wake up tomorrow and have a perfect relationship with God, right? Sometimes if we tell ourselves, you know what, I'm going to start having a better spiritual life, I'm going to improve spiritually, then we expect to just wake up the next day and it happened. It's not going to work like that, right? It takes time, especially if we have little to no spiritual life at all. And so if we tell ourselves, okay, I'm willing to put away these worldly distractions, these earthly things, because a lot of times our minds are very focused on earthly materials and earthly things. If we can say, okay, I'm willing to take my mind off of those and put my focus on trying to achieve that goal of loving God above all else. Put my focus totally on him. And there's going to be ups and downs, right? It's not going to happen overnight to where we're going to be able to go, it's like one day we don't pray at all and use our phone all day. We're not going to be able to go the very next day of not using our phone at all and praying all day, right? It's going to take more time. And that's okay, but the first step in order to accomplish this, in order to love God above everything else, instead of just saying, yeah, I love God above everything else, is have that willingness, is be willing to take that first step, to tell ourselves, okay, I truthfully want to love God above all else. I truthfully want to enter into a relationship with him. And so that's step number 1, is that willingness. Step number 2, which I know is, we've heard talked about a lot, but because it is so important, is prayer and that relationship building with God. Because think about it, in order to truthfully love God, we got to know the guy, right? We got to build a relationship with him. We got to talk to him. We got to listen to him, and we have to build a friendship. Sometimes we have a tendency to overcomplicate our relationship with God, how a friendship with God works, when in reality, it's just like a normal human friendship. If I want to become friends with someone, I have to talk to that person, and that person has to talk back. We have to build this friendship of talking to each other and wanting to be around each other. And God always wants to be around us. God is always there, wanting and willing to talk to us. But are we to him, right? Once we have the willingness to say, okay, I want to put my mindset totally on God, then we can take the next step and say, okay, I am going to start praying so that I may put that focus totally on God and achieve that great commandment of putting him above everything else, right? Above ourselves, above any earthly item, including our cell phones, right? Above everything else. But in order to do that, we have to build a friendship with him. And this goes along with the first step, which is putting away these earthly distractions. Now, I'm not saying that something like a cell phone is necessarily a bad thing. That can be a good thing when used correctly. However, if it takes up more time than God, that's when it becomes an issue. And so we're not going to be able to sort of switch that time overnight. Now, when entering into this prayer, there are some practical ways we can achieve this prayer life, because let's face it, it's hard to go from no prayer life at all to just a complete prayer life. And so some tips that I would give, because I've gotten this question a lot, is there are a lot of different ways to pray, right? And it's different for everybody. What works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me. Something that I like to do is I like to journal, because I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times when I'm praying in my head, my mind sort of starts to wander. And so I'll journal my prayers down, sort of keep my mind focused on what I'm doing, right? Journal my prayers down. I like out loud prayers as well, right? Out loud stated prayers. For you, it might be different. Some may like journaling, some may not like journaling. Whatever way it is, we need to set aside a certain time and say, okay, at this time I'm going to pray, and in this spot I'm going to pray. Because let's face it, it's hard to put down the earthly distractions. Something that I did when I was sort of trying to achieve this, especially when I had fallen out of my prayer life, was I was playing video games. I remember this exactly. I was playing video games, and I had set an alarm on my phone for a certain time that I was going to pray. And you know how you can name an alarm? I named that alarm, "Go pray right now or I'm disappointed in you." And I was just sitting there playing video games, and the alarm went off, and I looked at my phone, and I was like, man, guess I gotta go pray, right? Turned off the console and went and started that prayer. And so that's a tip that we could do, right? Setting an alarm on our phone, setting an actual place, an actual time, and not overwhelming ourselves at the same time, right? Not saying, oh, I have to do all this prayer in order to achieve what I want to achieve, right? You don't have to pray an entire rosary at once. If you can only pray a decade of a rosary, then pray a decade of a rosary, right? I mean, it's better than not praying anything at all. Obviously, praying the full rosary is amazing, but if we're going to take it step by step, little by little, then we have to start with little things, such as praying a decade of the rosary, right? Doing a prayer journal for just 10 minutes out of the day, right? And then slowly but surely work up to that full prayer life, so that we may have that relationship with him, that closeness with him, so that we may be willing to put him above everything else. And then the third step number 3 that I want to talk about, and sort of after we've achieved this prayer life, after we've achieved this relationship with him, we've gotten close to him, we're willing to say, okay, I know him, I love him above all else, I want to continue loving him above all else. Sometimes keeping it up can be a hard thing, right? I mean, life gets to us. We have school, work, right? We have things that keep us busy. And so sometimes continuing it can be a hard thing. And so this step number 3 can really, really help us. It's something that only we as Catholics have, which is a sacrament, right? A sacrament is just such a beautiful thing. The 7 sacraments, right? The Baltimore Catechism definition of a sacrament is an outward sign instituted by Christ to give grace. Okay, an outward sign instituted by Christ to give grace. The sacraments give us the grace that we need in order to continue working toward that path of heaven, in order to continue working toward a closeness with God that allows us to put him above everything else, right? I mean, we have these sacraments, which are such beautiful gifts from Jesus Christ himself that he instituted, that we as Catholics have, right? We have the Eucharist, we have reconciliation, we have baptism, confirmation, holy matrimony, holy orders, anointing of the sick, these amazing sacraments that we definitely can and should utilize. And I'm telling you, doing these sacraments, going through with these sacraments, help us so much in staying close to God and in continuing to love him above all else. And so just to review those 3 steps, which again, it's going to take time, and that's okay. It's going to take effort, which it needs to, right? It ultimately comes down to a willingness. So that's step number 1, is a willingness to put God above all else, to say, okay, yes, I'm going to follow this commandment. I'm going to love God above everything else in my life, right? Is a willingness. Step number 2 is that prayer, that building a relationship with Jesus Christ so that we may love him. And that step number 3 is the sacraments, which are so important to our spiritual life, and certainly feed our spiritual health, our spiritual life as a whole, so that we may continue loving God above all else, which is definitely something that we all need and that we are all called to achieve. So now that the topic is done, do y'all know what it's time for now? It's time for
the Saint of the Week.
And today's saint of the week is Saint Teresa of Calcutta, whose feast day is coming up pretty soon. While I'm sure I've talked about her before, she is a very popular saint. It is always worth talking about Saint Teresa of Calcutta, again, just because she exemplifies this idea of loving God above all else to the absolute best ability. She was very charitable, and in her work, living around people who were very, very poor. Again, she was a 20th century saint, so she's fairly recent. Living around people as a nun who were very, very poor, she founded the Missionaries of Charity because it was some of her former students, as she would help the poor, would help her help the poor, and therefore started the core of the Missionaries of Charity. And eventually, those missions led to more than just the poor. It was kids who needed to be adopted, right? Orphan kids. There were alcoholics who they helped as well. There were so many people who they helped. In fact, St. Teresa of Calcutta was so charitable and so just generous and amazing, and had such a deep devotion to God. And of course, I could sit here talking forever about her story. We can't get into all of her story in just this video, but she did that to such a degree that even the secular world of the 20th century acknowledged her, which, considering how, it wasn't as anti-religious as it is today, but still, considering the fact that the secular world acknowledged her with a Nobel Peace Prize is just absolutely incredible. Saint Teresa of Calcutta has such a beautiful story and truly exemplifies that putting God first and putting God above all else, and sort of taking a step back yourself, because she certainly did not live for herself. She lived for God, which all of us can take from as well. So, Saint Teresa of Calcutta, pray for us. So, thank you all so much for watching. Please like the video. Please go to my website, kidcatholic.com. On there, all my videos are up there. You can contact me. You can read about me. Details about my speaking engagements are up there. My shop is up there, so if you want to get your very own Kid Catholic merch, you can go do that as well. So please go check that out. Check out 3 of my social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The link to all 3 of those will be in the description down below. Please comment any saint or topic suggestions that you might have. Again, if you can't comment on this video, go to the community tab post. Comment on there, because that would be absolutely fantastic. Please comment any saint or topic suggestions that you might have. Again, check out my website if you want to book me to come and speak to your men's group, women's group, youth group, church, school, whatever it might be. Please reach out to me at kidcatholic1@gmail.com, or go to my website, kidcatholic.com, and email me from there. So, once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you are having an absolutely wonderful Tuesday so far, and a wonderful start to your school year, as I am having as well. So, thank you all so much for watching. This was Keaton of Good Catholic. I will see you all next week, and hi, Brielle.